Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidwaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanora Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Bande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pitattvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakhattvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing Panchadashi, first chapter, and we are now at the sloka, completed sloka 14, and in the process discussed how a jiva concept arises. The ignorance is the pratibandha. Pratibandha means obstructing. Obstructing what? Obstructing for my knowledge of knowing myself. So I don't know who I am, and therefore I am transacting with the world. And not only that I don't know who I am, I don't know that I don't know who I am. Everybody thinks that they know who they are. But at the same time, in the very transactions, it's obvious that they don't know what they are, because when they say, I am this, so very statement, I am this, implies that they don't know who they are. Why? Because I am is a subject, and which is a conscious entity, exists. Conscious entity, and this is existent inert entity, and so I cannot be this, because a conscious entity and unconscious entity cannot be equated. But I am equating because I don't know myself, so I have to say something, and whenever I say something, I identifying myself with the local body, mind and intellect, say I am this. I am son of so and so, husband of so and so, wife of so and so. All relationship at the either emotional level, intellectual level. I am an engineer, I am a doctor, I am a scientist, I am this, I am laborer, and so on and so forth, depending upon the intellectual accomplishments that I have. That's what our biodata resume is. And also from the physical form, I am a man, I am 6 feet tall, I am so and so, I am from India, I am brown color. All those statements are with respect to the appearance of the skin, appearance of the height, appearance of the body. So at the body level or the mind level or the intellect level, because identifying with this, I am telling I am this. I don't say I am a chair, I am a table, I am all that, because they are completely away from me. So with the body identification I am including, and the chair, of course, I say this is mine. This is ahankara and the mamakara. Mamakara is that which doesn't belong to this BMI. I want also this is you are touching my leg, you are touching my feet, you are hitting my this one. All those, this is because this is also I know this, but this is mine. But I am this also comes into picture with respect to the body. But with respect to the other things of other than the world, the rest of the world, they are mine, and therefore this is mine, that is mine, this is mine. Therefore I am trying to accumulate everything else, and the more I have, the more I am. So I have $1 million house, that's mine. Therefore I am also very great because of that. And this so-called greatness of I am, because I know this, I know that, I know minister here, I know minister there, therefore I am also great. So whatever possessions of mamakara becomes a bigger problem in terms of the ego wise. So this ahankara and mamakara, amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa shanti rajyavam. So in the 18th chapter, it says you should not have the manam and abhimanam, amanitvam adambam, dambam should not be there. Manam is proud of what you have, and the abhimana or the dambam is even though you don't have, you behave as though you have. That is, here you have it and therefore you behave as though you have. There you don't have it and as though you have. And this happens, in the United States. You say, oh, my daughter got admission, but she didn't select it because she thought that is not good. That means she didn't get admission also. They have to say they got it because other fellow may think that my daughter is stupid, otherwise other fellow got it and my daughter didn't get it. So she got it, but she rejected it, is a better way for them to say. And that's what is essentially dambam. You don't have it, but you claim you have it, and that's, you are proud of that, and that's how you behave also. So as Krishna says, no, amanita. Having not that is a virtue for preparation of the mind. Because when I say ahankara, mamakara is the possessions of whatever I have, and I don't have that, so I would like that also to be mine. And I'll be happy if the whole universe is become mine. If the whole world becomes mine, and that's essentially the whole world, the Manushya Ananda is considered as the one who is young enough to digest whatever he eats, and also he owns the whole world, and his happiness is called one unit of happiness. And anybody who is less than what, their happiness is much less than compared to that. And 100 times of this unit of happiness is the other Gandharvas, and 100 times of that is other guys. All the way, if you go 10 to the power of 26 times the Ananda of one happiness is what the Hiranyagarbha has. Anyway, that's the scale of Ananda, comes in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Now we take up the 15th sloka. Here he now goes into the avidya and the Maya aspect, and Ishvara and Jiva. He's trying to differentiate how one became many, and in the process of many, what is the cause for all that. All that the appearing of many is all appearance only, because from the point of pure consciousness, there cannot become, there is no real creation, because real creation involves a modification, and infinite cannot undergo modification. Why? Because it's infinite. Only finite things can, ring can become a bangle, bangle can become a necklace. Gold doesn't become a bangle by transformation, it can appear as a bangle only, it can appear as a necklace. And in the transformation of a bangle to a necklace, when the bangle is destroyed to make it into a necklace, gold has not destroyed. Thank God, gold remains as a gold. That's why you give it and make it. If gold is destroyed, you don't give it to say make it into a necklace, because it's the gold that is expensive, not the form ring or a necklace. And because that is from which it came, by which it is sustained, into which it goes back. And that is totality. So it's a different order. It does not undergo any modifications in the process. That's why it's mithya. Let's take sloka 15, and these things get clarified as we go along. Chidanandamaya Brahma, Chidanandamaya Brahma, Pratibimba Samanvita, Pratibimba Samanvita, Tamo Rajas Sattva Guna, Tamo Rajas Sattva Guna, Prakutir Vividha Chasa, Prakutir Vividha Chasa. Together, Chidanandamaya Brahma, Pratibimba Samanvita, Tamo Rajas Sattva Guna, Prakutir Vividha Chasa. So, Chidanandamaya Brahma, Pratibimba Samanvita. So, Chidanandamaya Brahma, Pratibimba. So, this is the theory of reflection. So, how do you explain this? There are two theories. One is the Abhasavada, and the Avachedavada in Vedanta. Here Vidyaranya is talking about the Abhasavada, reflection, and Avachedavada is also sometimes used, and Shankara uses also, and that is related to the Ghatakasha and so on. So we will go through a little bit how the Ghataka in the 6th chapter, Vidyaranya is going to talk about Ghatakasa, Jalakasa, Meghakasa and Mahakasha. And there we are talking about essentially Avacheda Rupa, Atma and Ishvara. And there is Abhasavada is a reflection, and just now I went through the original consciousness and the reflecting medium, Buddhi, and the reflected medium is reflects the consciousness. So Buddhi becomes activated with the consciousness, and that activated Buddhi is the one that is transacting in the world. And that's what he thinks a notion. The notions are in the Buddhi, and the notions can only be dropped by proper knowledge. Proper knowledge can only be through a pramana. This is the Buddhi. Through Vritti only one can remove the Vritti Ajnanam can be removed by Vritti Jnanam. That's all essentially. Therefore, it is a Vritti process of knowing. You have to learn, and that has to be. That's why Srotavyaha, Mantavyaha, Nididhyasitavya. There are no shortcuts here. It says all sit down and evaluate, inquire who am I, you will realize. Nothing will happen. You will realize who you are, but doesn't mean that you realize Aham Brahmasmi. For that, you need a Mahavakya Vichara is required. For that, your mind needs to be prepared also. But anyway, Chidananda Maya Brahma Pradibimba Samanvita Tamo Rajas Tattva Guna Prakriti Vividha. So now let's go to how this whole thing is occurring from the process. There is original Brahman. Original Brahman means original consciousness, which is of the nature of Satchid Ananda. Satchid Ananda Mayam Brahma. Satchid Ananda is pure existent consciousness and happiness of the nature of Brahman. This are not attributes of the Brahman, because the philosophers they say these are gunas of Brahman. So gunas of Brahman is, he is existent consciousness and infiniteness. He is the property of Brahman. It's not a property. It is his intrinsic nature. So what is a property and what is an intrinsic nature? Just for clarity wise, in the objective senses one can go a little bit easier. It says, let's say the property is that which defines the object with this the object has. So example is, that's what we study in the chemistry class. Say there are physical properties, then there are the chemical properties we study, and that's how we identify the chemical from its properties only. If it doesn't have any property, we cannot identify the material. So material itself, in the chemistry class we learned thing is, material is identified from its properties. That's what we measure. If we add this, then what happens? And if we add this, what happens? Only this kind of material that has a property will respond to it. The others may not respond. So by the response of the reactions that we do, we try to find out what the original material is. So those are property of that to react is what we are basing on. Now Chidananda, Satchidananda is infinite and Brahman, and from the Brahman point there is no creation itself. Creation is therefore appears to be Viveka, not to the Brahman. Brahman is there no one to say Navagachati Namanaha and Yato Vacho Nivartante Aprapya Manasa Saha. Mind cannot go there, speech cannot go there, because if they go there, there is something to go there and to not to go there. All that is only at the level of Vyavahara, transactional reality only. Ajnani is only at the level, Jnani is only at the transactional level. So one has to be very clear in terms of Chidanandamaya Brahma. So I am of the nature of Satchidanandam. And Mayam here is, it is of the intrinsic nature. It is itself is Chit Satchidananda. They are not properties. So how do you prove that it's not property? So if Sat is a property, let's take a Sat. If Sat is a property, that means existence is a property. What is now? It is a property of the Brahman. So we dismiss that on the basis of logic also. How? Because if Sat is a property, then the property should be different from the one who has the property, the locus of property. If it is a blue lotus, blue is different from the lotus, and it is locus in the lotus, and therefore if there is a Sat, and Sat is a property of what? Of something other than the property. That's what essentially. So somebody has that property. Then he can say, yes, this is a property and that's not his property, and so on and so forth. So when I say Sat is a property, that's called Viseshanam, and Viseshanam cannot exist independent of Viseshyam. So Viseshyam is an object that which has this Viseshanam. Viseshanam is an adjective and this is a noun. So noun should be there for adjective to belong to. That's what essentially it means. So which means that the noun is different from the Viseshanam. It cannot be same as, then it cannot be difference between blue lotus. Blue is different from a lotus. That's why blue can be with the lotus. And so there is a lotus devoid of the blueness, or that which is the property of the blueness, which is different from the blueness. Because it's a lotus, not necessarily the blue is only a property superimposed on top of it. So if there is a Viseshyam, that is object, which must be different from Viseshanam. So what is that Viseshyam, what is that object which has this property of Sat and which is different from Sat? So if anything different from Sat can only be Asat. Right? If there is something that is not Sat, it can only be Asat. Asat means non-existing. What you are saying is that there is a non-existent object which has the existent as a property. How can there be a non-existent Vishayam? So there cannot be any object which is opposite to Sat, and therefore Sat cannot be an attribute of any object. That's number one. Number two, Sat, if it is an property, then it ends somewhere where the other one begins, and therefore there is nothing else other than Sat, because other one is. Therefore Sat is infinite. Since it is infinite, it cannot be a property, or it cannot be locus of any property also. So it is Satchidananda. So Satta eva chit Chittaya yaham. That's what in the Brahmana Maharshi says. So existence is infinite, consciousness is infinite, because the scripture says so. The Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness is infinite. Anandam is infinite, Anandam is limitless, because happiness is, if there is any limitation, there is a sorrow, therefore happiness is infinite. So Satchid Ananda is, each one is infinite. But there cannot be many infinities, so it is, existence is same as consciousness is same as limitless. It is one Brahma, therefore Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam Brahma. So this is called the Brahma. They are not properties, they are called Swarupa Lakshanam. So from the point of science, this is just from the analysis of, because infinite, Anantatvam eva, therefore it is Swarupa Lakshanam. That's what the Shankara argues in the Bhashya of Taittiriya Upanishad. It says Anantatvat. Anantatva means because it is infinite. Therefore Satchid is a Swarupa Lakshanam, not the Viseshanam. That's what is the statement is. It's a Lakshanam. So what is essentially the property in the simple logic wise, any object has a property, right? Any object will prove it. Any object doesn't have a Swarupa Lakshanam. We'll go step by step. If we say this is a property of chair is to have 4 legs to stand and a seat to sit and perhaps a back support if there is a support. But there are essential properties and there are non-essential properties that defines a chair as a chair. So for everyone there is properties that can be attributes that can define the chair. And in the science, there are, in the mathematics also, says there is a necessary qualification and there is a necessary and sufficient qualification. 2 aspects. This is called Swabhavika Lakshanam in the Sanskrit. There is a Swabhavika Lakshanam and there is a Tatastha Lakshanam. So Lakshanam, we just said, Satchidananda is Lakshana Vakyam, it's of the infinite nature. But in the Lakshana, the Visheshana, there is Swabhavikam and Tatastha Lakshanam. Tatastha Lakshanam is incidental qualification. We went through the creation is defined as Janma Jasyataha, or a creator is the one who created this universe. That creation itself is apparent, therefore it's only apparent definition, but therefore is a Tatastha Lakshanam. Convenience to know. So what is Tatastha Lakshanam? It is called the Samyoga Sambandha, contact relationship. And therefore, if you remove the contact, then that relationship is not valid. Therefore, but it's useful because there are objects which doesn't have the contact. So look at there are several pot, and says that pot on the table is what I want, not the pot on the floor. So here I'm qualifying a pot, and therefore pot is very specific now. That is one pot only that's on the table. So the one that with the qualified by sitting on the table. So the qualification of sitting on the table applies only as long as the pot is sitting on the table. And this table does not belong to the pot, nor the pot belongs to the table. So they can be separated, but it's only contactly right now that somebody put it, so I want that. So this is called Tatastha Lakshanam, or contact relation, Samyoga Sambandha. It's called essentially an incidental qualification also. These are only sufficient qualification to define that part compared to other. There are necessary qualifications, and necessary qualifications Swabhavika Sambandha. So Swabhavika Sambandha is that because of which one, that's what we call we need in the chemical analysis to identify what is that material. We need to know what is its nature. Nature means Swabhavam. So what is its nature? From its natural property, others should not have it, and this alone has it, therefore I can distinguish. So what's the Swabhavika Lakshanam of a sugar? It says sweetness is the Swabhavikam. That means it's a necessary qualification. And the necessary qualification is that if it is the sugar has to be sweet. It is necessary that it has to be sweet. It may look like a sugar, but if it doesn't taste like it doesn't taste sweet, then it's not sugar. So looking like a sugar is not a criteria. What is the criteria? It is necessary that it has to be sweet, because that is its swabhavikam. But that is not essentially Swarupa Lakshanam. The sweetness is not a Swarupa Lakshanam. So for that you have to apply converse. It should be not only necessary but sufficient qualification. In the mathematics it's called necessary and sufficient. It may be necessary but not sufficient. So take the example again of the sugar. So how do we know it is a sufficient qualification? We know it is necessary that it has to be sweet, but it's not sufficient qualification. So how do we know that? You have to apply a converse. Converse means if it is the sweet, it has to be sugar. The first statement is if it is a sugar, it has to be sweet. That's a direct statement. The converse statement is if it is sweet, it has to be sugar. So sweet is therefore sugar. Any sweet has to be sugar. Any sweet need not be sugar, and need not have sugar also. Why? Because now we have equal and Splenda and so many things that people add because of to overcome the diabetes. Therefore they are sweet but they are not sugar. So if it is sweet, it has to be sugar is not valid. Therefore it is only necessary qualification. If it is sugar, it has to be sweet. But if it is sweet, it need not be sugar. It can be sugar, but it need not be sugar. Therefore, it's not sufficient to define a sugar. So, it is necessary but not sufficient. Therefore, it's not a Swarupa Lakshanam of the sugar. For any chemical, if you take it, there is no Swarupa Lakshanam for any chemical to define it. But you have to define the Swarupam by its intrinsic structure. And intrinsic structure is, for example, for water, intrinsic structure is H2O. Now we apply, water is H2O. That's a direct statement. Converse statement is H2O is water. That's true. If it is H2O, it has to be water only. So therefore, both it is necessary and sufficient, but it's not a qualification. It's intrinsic nature itself. But only difference between the Brahman and any intrinsic nature of any object in the world is that here H2O is not the original of water, it's only an assemblage of something other than itself. Assemblage of two atoms of hydrogen and one oxygen or oxygen. So hydrogen and oxygen can have Swarupa Lakshanam. No, again, hydrogen or oxygen is nothing but assemblage of some other things. So I keep going with electrons, protons, neutrons, and still trying to find out what is the fundamental constituent building block from which all these things are assembled. And we are still finding because we are not able to find. The more you faster you bang it, the smaller particles are coming out. So knowledge is going down, and we are not able to find out what is the Swarupa Lakshanam of any object in the world. Because intrinsically every object is nothing but assembled from something other than itself, and therefore the only Swarupa Lakshanam can be possible only for Brahman, because there is no, Brahman doesn't have an assemblage of things. It's not a combination of many parts, and therefore it is essentially the limitless, partless Brahman. So Brahman cannot have internal differences, Swagata Vedas. Where Advaita Vedanta says Ekam Eva Advitiyam. There is no Sajati, Vijati, Swagata Vedas. Whereas Bhagavan Ramanuja says that it has no Vijati, Sajati Vedas, but it has internal differences, Swagata Veda. Why? Because he says so. It's called according to them, because we see differences in the universe, and that's what Vishwarupa means. Vishwarupa means whole universe, Lord is showing, and one side all gods are there, one side Rakshas are there, and people are going into the mouth, and all that can be seen. That means he has the parts, and therefore he has internal differences, and that's what essentially is infinite, its internal differences. Okay, it's not logical, it's nothing to do with the logic, because that's the nature of the reality. You have to accept it. It becomes accepted because of based on the Vishwarupam that he shows and all that. So essentially, Sahasra Sirsha Purusha, Sahasra Akshas, Sahasrapa, he has so many feet, so many houses. So literally they take it as thousands of heads and so on, and each head is different from the Sirsha, Pani, the legs and hands, obviously. That's why it's specifying parts. So different leg is different from a hand, hand is different from head, and they are different from eyes, and different from the heads. So that's why each one is being specified, because they're different. That means there's an internal differences according to this. But according to the logic as well as the Advaita Vedanta, there cannot be any internal differences. Therefore, pure Satchidanandam is Mayam, it is of the infinite Brahman. And Pratibimba Samanvita Tamo Rajas Sattva Guna Pragutir Vividachasa. So now, it is pure Brahman, nothing is there. But since there is a creation, apparent creation, there is a Jiva, because this discussion on Panchadashi is only for Jiva, not for pure consciousness Brahman. And therefore, there is apparently, I see the differences, and I know I am ignorant of it. That's why I want to study, and I want to know who I am, or what is Ishvara and what is Jagat. So I want to know all the three: who is Jiva, who is Jagat, and what's Ishvara also. And for that only all the studies are. And here he is defining, says how exactly Ishvara is. Ishvara is Pratibimba Samanvita. So essentially, the Ishvara is essentially because of the association with the Prakriti, the Pratibimbam, reflection. So pure consciousness as though reflected in Prakriti. Prakriti is what? Prakarshena Kriti Yogyatvat is Prakriti. That which is essentially appears to be there as varieties and so on, which be varieties of many things here, and that is essentially true, means the done Prakarshena Kruti. Kruti is done. Prakrishta Kruti, he is essentially an exalted creation. It's already done. Creation has been done. He wanted to become many and he became many. And this becoming many is beginningless also. So that means when that is beginningless, it also will be endless also too. So therefore, this Prakriti is essentially is a Pratibimbam. It is a reflection of the pure Satchidananda in the Prakriti. Prakriti itself is inert. So itself cannot do anything, but it gets reflected as though and behaves as though it's a conscious and powerful entity. And that's what is it? The Prakriti is. And Prakriti is itself is Trigunatmikam. So it is of the three gunas has. Prakriti has three gunas. Sattva, Rajas, Tamo guna. And the Prakriti itself is Maya. So Mayantu Prakritim Vidyat. Mayanantu Maheshwaram. It's in this Svetaswara Upanishad. It says Prakriti is defined as Maya. And in the Pratibimba, reflection of the consciousness in the Maya is the Ishvara. And what is Maya? Where did it come? Ya ma sa Maya. That which is not there but appears to be there. And therefore it is only also of the same nature. Maya itself is Maya. And which is same as Prakriti, and in that reflection of the Chidananda Brahman is essentially is the Ishvara being defined. And Tamo Rajas Tattva Guna Pragutir Dvividha Sa. So it is endowed with, now he is going to more details, the Prakriti is endowed with three gunas, Trigunatmikam, Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna and Tamo Guna. And these three Trigunas are in a balanced state in the originally in the Maya. And the reflection of the consciousness Satchidananda in the Maya is Ishvara. That's what we define. So Ishvara in the Prakriti Sat, and it is called pure Satchidananda. So here is Dvividha. This Prakriti appears as two, and one is Maya and another is Avidya. That's what he is going to talk about. Here we are talking about the reflection theory. There is a Avatshedavada and this is called Abhasavada. In the Abhasavada, there is of course the Pratibimbavada is also there as a part of it. So we will stop at the Abhasavada. Avachedavada is nothing but Ghata Akasha and Mahakasha. So the Akasha is there, and when the pot maker made a pot, and now we have a Ghata Akasha. Ghata Akasha means the Akasha, the space, as though limited by the pot walls. So if the space is limited, pot space has a property of a limited space. So how much of amount of you put in that the pot space can occupy, it depends upon the size of the pot. In the Advaita philosophies, the Atma is compared with like a pot. Everybody is like a pot. One is a big pot and is a small pot. So everybody has, these are different from the Brahman. So everybody is only of the pot size, of different size pots. So why different? So some are bigger pots and some are smaller pots. Why my pot is small and why other fellow's pot is big? Don't ask the question. It is so. Why? Because that's what it is. You have only small pot and you have to accept that. And some people, the bigger, how much Ananda I get, Moksha is nothing but filling my pot with the full, to the full. So I have become full. I have become how much full? Depending upon how much my pot can accommodate. Other pot will be more happy because his pot is bigger size and he can fill up more. So he can be more happy. It can be other fellow. There is a hierarchy of pot sizes and hierarchy of happiness also. And some pots have a adogati. They cannot fill up with happiness. They are always destined to lower only. All that is part of the Advaita philosophy. Why, some are real, some are great spots very close to the Parabrahma, some are small pots away from Parabrahma. And this is by axiomatic statements only. Of course, Madhvacharya provides some kind of references which people have a problem getting of where it is. So anyway, we're not getting into that. So, but in the Visishta Advaita, they accept the Brahman is the material cause also, but each one essentially is the, also there is a Jiva, Bhinatvam and all that. So even Moksha involves going to Vaikuntha, and there are different Jivas there. There is also hierarchy of Jivas. There is Lakshmi, and she is Nitya Mukta, and also there is the Vishwaksena, and all those people are there very close to Lord Vishnu, and you have to go, you have to serve all of them, and that's what your moksha is, serving them and be happy with that. So that's the nature of the moksha there. But here the Maya, Prakriti, and according to Advaita, the Ishvara is nothing but reflection of the Prakriti in the Maya. And in the case of Avachedavada, Avachedavada is Ghatakasha and Mahakasha, says space is somehow doesn't realize the part space. Part space doesn't realize I am the total space. So we say, how can I be total? I am only limited by the part walls. Therefore, I have only a small size part space. And the other one is a bigger part size because he is lucky. He has a big size part. And like that, space thinks that I am limited. What space? The one which is enclosed in inside the wall. The part maker doesn't really create a space and then put it there. When he creates a part wall, space is automatically got conditioned by that. It's called the conditioned consciousness. So Atma doesn't get conditioned. Atma, as though is enclosed in the antakaranam, in the buddhi, is the jiva. They don't believe in the reflection here. So the Atma enclosed in the antakaranam, in the buddhi, mind and intellect, that the subtle body is essentially the jiva. And what do I have to realize? Realize that consciousness that is enclosed is same as the total consciousness while being in that enclosed space. So essentially Upahita Chaitanyam. So part space has to recognize that I am a total space. As a space, I am not limited by the part walls. Even the part walls are in me. I am not inside the part. And that has to be recognized by the space. And that's what is realization of a part spaces, are called Ghatakasha. I don't have to break the part to know that I am a total space. While living in the part only, I can recognize as a space that I am a total space. Ghatakasha and Mahakasha. That analogy is essentially Avachedavada. And Abhasavada is the pure consciousness, and there is an inert medium, and the reflection of in the subtle matter is what is called the Chidabhasa. So I have original consciousness, I have a reflecting medium, and I have a Chidabhasa, and the reflection depends upon the medium that is reflecting. If the buddhi is pure, like a pure mirror, then whole reflection occurs, and you see he is very bright. He's very bright. When you say, oh, he's a very bright person, when you say bright, not that he's shining, that means consciousness is beaming through his, you can look at the eyes, you can see. Otherwise, so many people are dull and lethargic eyes, so you cannot even see. The light is not there. Light is not there means the consciousness is not coming in. By looking at the face itself, people say, my God, he's bright. The brightness is coming from purity of the mind and the purity of the buddhi that comes through. If the mind of buddhi is impure, then the impurity makes the reflection not completely clear. It reflects because it's a subtle body. It does reflect. Therefore, the reflection of consciousness is nothing but the life. When you say he's alive, we don't know what life is. Doctors cannot tell me what life is, and we know that he is breathing, he is responding to the stimulus, therefore he is alive. So we are only expressing the expression of the life as a life itself, but life itself we don't know. He's gone. Why? He's not responding. So I had to tell only whether alive or not by the response. Otherwise I don't know what life is. Life is the reflection of the consciousness. And why he is not responding? Because the subtle body left that place. Gross body only remaining, so it cannot respond the way the subtle body does. And that's why subtle body is going where? Into different lokas where it needs to exhaust next set of vasanas. So reflection is the theory, Abhasavada. And why is this better than the other one? The reflection makes one alive. In the case of subtle body, it makes it alive. In the case of inert bodies, it doesn't make it alive. It only expresses as the existence itself. And I gave an analogy of light. When the red object, it looks red only because the white light, all the wavelengths are absorbed except red, therefore it looks red only. Other one looks blue because it's absorbing everything else other than the blue. So in the case of inert things, it is absorbing everything else other than the existence, so expressing only existence. And that's what essentially the inert things cannot express. So Abhasavada can explain why the difference between the inert and the conscious entities. In the case of the Avachedavada, where part Ghata, Akasa and so on, we cannot distinguish what is a conscious entity versus unconscious. Chaitanya, Achaitanya, Vastu, the differentiation, Viveka cannot be done by the basis of that. But anyway, one is essentially Vachaspati, the Avachedavada, Ghatakasha, and Bhamati school, whereas Abhasavada is from the Vivarana school, and most of the people follow the Abhasavada since it's easy to understand. Whereas the Shankara doesn't have any preference, he uses both examples, and in the Mandukya Upanishad, the Gaudapada uses in fact Ghatakasha example also. So that is total consciousness reflected in the Prakriti, the Maya is the Ishvara. So reflection theory is we are using as the total consciousness reflecting the total space is Ishvara. Whereas the Jiva is reflected in the local entity, and the difference is going to be more elucidated in the next few slokas. So that's what, so we just talk about the 15th sloka, and we will continue tomorrow the 16th and so on. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.